So this is the 11:50 hours GMT edition of the Khoodeelaar television channel, broadcast on the Baby Angel Geronimo editions platform. And we are taking an overall look at the latest perpetration, depravity, evilness by the congenital liar Boris Johnson, as being promoted by the lying Daily Mail. The lying Daily Mail is claiming that those who criticize or those who are criticizing the Titanic adventure are leftists, and they are doing so to deny what he is suggesting, pure scientific inquiries. Now, that's a lie, because the Rupert Murdoch scum today is telling the fact that the actual vessel exploded or imploded 6 days ago, and both the United States government and the UK government knew that that implosion had taken place. Now, what we are saying is that it's not just the scum, it's the entire world media saying that, except Boris the liar Johnson, except the evilness, who is the overall editor of the lying operation called the Daily Mail. For 6 days, the UK government, the USA government, and the USA security agencies have been lying, carrying on the pretense and going along the propaganda line that they were searching for the 5 passengers. When they have known for 6 days that because of the instant implosion of the vessel, all five of the passengers, tourists, call them whatever, died instantly. So this is a giant operation in lying, manipulation and propaganda, brainwashing, extrapolation to everything else that is going on in society, in the country. And you can see that every statement that they make, the government, the agencies, every statement that the governments in the USA and the UK come to that, in France, in Germany, and other civilized, advanced societies, they say, cannot be trusted without due an additional investigation and probe and inquiries. We have no agenda either way against any government or any agencies, but overall, our purpose in doing this broadcast and these broadcasts is to uphold the truth, to tell the truth. And when he said that we broadcast under the banner of Baby Angel Geronimo editions, the Baby Angel Geronimo is the barometer, the witness to the truth of what is going on. And baby angel Geronimo knows from the lying that Boris Johnson, when he was incumbent at number 10 Downing Street, Boris Johnson perpetrated the lies as he colluded with the liar Christian Middlemiss, the evilness personified at DEFRA. Evilness personified at DEFRA, Christian Middlemiss, confected and conspired to create a false impression about baby angel Geronimo's health. The baby angel Geronimo knows that Middlemiss lied, DEFRA lied, the rest of DEFRA lied, the rest of the cabal operating behind Boris Johnson at number 10 Downing Street lied, that the entirety of the British media, including those that appeared temporarily to be sympathetic with what baby angel Geronimo's mum, Helen MacDonald, was saying, all of them lied as well, including the scum, because the scum ran a one-off stunt describing the liar Stanley Johnson as its, the Murdoch dirty digger owned scum, environment correspondent. And in temporary disguise, they said that Stanley Johnson supported baby angel Geronimo's cause and that baby angel Geronimo was not ill or infected and should be left alone. Of course, Stanley Johnson, being the biological father and propagandist for the image of Boris Johnson, the liar, whose childhood ambition was to be the world king, soon backtracked because the world king, so called, must have got in touch with him. And from that moment onwards, Stanley Johnson's alleged sympathetic stance in support of baby angel Geronimo's ethical and moral stand remained a one-off stunt, and it got overwhelmed by the main narrative coming from the evilness Boris Johnson, refusing all reasonable evidence, all ethical evidence, and all ethical and moral representations, and sticking by the evilness personified Christian Middlemiss against the baby angel Geronimo, as did the three successive judges, the latest one to sit in the London High Court to play the rubber stamping role for the DEFRA morons, repeating the two previous ones, copying the lies perpetrated against baby angel Geronimo by the two previous High Court judges. So baby angel Geronimo today knows that what they did against him in the narrative, in the agenda, in the propaganda, they are doing about any criticism anywhere in the United Kingdom or in the USA for that matter, who are raising, the critics raising genuine concern about the safety of the vessel. And it has been proven that the vessel was known to be dangerously unfit. Let's let's look at the page spread on the issue run by the Dirty Digger Marduk scum on pages 8 and 9. And the main heading on the page 8 of the two-page spread, 8 and 9, is in bold letters. TB Ross pulled out of Titanic subdive. And the two smaller subheadings under the Daredevil Kemp Xed show plan last year. Experts feared for Ender Star. Sea craft not fit for purpose. And there is the last one on page 9. Teen, that is teenager, didn't want to go. And the teenager who crashed with his father Dawood, Suleiman, he didn't want to go to the adventure, but he only went there to please his father. And his aunt Asma says, Sul did trip for dad. And it says, the British university student killed was terrified about the deep sea trip, but did it for his father, well, his dad. On Father's Day, his family said. Suleiman Dawood, 19, went with his businessman father, Shahzada, on the 200,000 pound a head exploration of the Titanic wreckage. Suleiman's aunt, Asma, said the University of Strathclyde business school student who had just completed his first year wanted to bond with his dad last Sunday. She told NBC News Suleiman had a sense that this was not okay and he was not very comfortable about doing it. But it was a Father's Day thing. It is a bonding experience, and he wanted the adventure of a lifetime, just like his father did. His father wanted it, and that was sul all the way. He would do anything for anyone. Asma said her younger brother, Shahzada, was obsessed with the Titanic from a young age. Suleiman's family said he was a big fan of science fiction literature and learning new things. His university in Glasgow said staff and students have been shocked and profoundly saddened. The family of other British passenger married that of two Hamish Harding said he lived his life for his family, his business, and for the next adventure. And in the highlight on the two-page spread, the Sun is saying, how much training is needed? Answer, they said none at all. Now, this has been so terrible. This is such a gigantic, absolute fraud and irresponsible thing to do that what happened is not even today known. Even this fact that they're saying that the both the United Kingdom and the United States governments knew immediately after the implosion. This is only a fraction, very tiny bit of the information. And it will take ages before other investigators investigate and piece together the actual details, which is show that the whole thing was completely, absolutely a criminal thing to do. We shall be continuing to update and offer updated commentary as well. Now, going back to television's Roscamp, let's have a read of this, the first part of the page two spread on the Sun. This is the TB. Well, how is it coming? TB Ross. Well, the camera is not. No, that is the one. The TB Ross pulled out of because of the lack of stability in the background where we are broadcasting. This is the shaking, stability that is causing this problem in the camera, getting the whole thing picture there. So what it is saying is that TB Ross pulled out of Titanic sub dive, sub meaning submarine dive. So let's read the text of it, the copy of this. And it's described as an exclusive by Rod McPhee, television editor for this scum. Daredevil documentary maker and ex EastEnder Ross Kemp nearly made a television show where he dived down to the Titanic on an Ocean Gate submersible at the same company. But the expert production company behind it quickly decided it was unsafe for anybody to go on the vessel after doing its own checks. Ross, 58, best known for playing Hardman Grant Mitchell on the BBC One soap, was being lined up to front the program last summer. His agent, inter-talent boss, Professor Jonathan Shalit, said their team checked out this OceanGate submersible and pulled out of using it as it was simply not considered safe or fit for purpose. So, all of these details are there in the Sun today. And contrast that with the absolutely criminal, typically criminal, evil boast by Boris Johnson in the Daily Mail that critics are left wing and that they are criticizing because they are supposedly ideologically antagonistic, opposed to scientific exploration. That's a lie. And it's only Boris Johnson and the Daily Mail in collusion and complicity that could lie like that. So we shall be, as I said, updating on this in due course. Now, moving on to the other items of today's. In the Financial Times today, there is a new kind of image of somebody who is having the lunch at the FT. And it is with an image that doesn't show the face of an individual. but it's about the anonymous Wall Street insider has gained a cult following for his viral lampooning of the world of finance. About Dover Soul and Rose in New York, he talks to Madison Derbyshire about banking's brutal war culture, using humor as a coping mechanism, and why he traded a lucrative career for comedy memes. Now, this is about banking. Banking is the robbery, not Muslim women wearing burqas resembling bank robbers. It's the banks that are the robbers. And what this cult following suggests is that whatever this individual who used to be in the finance business has revealed is still a very small fraction of the truth. The world of capitalism is a world of finance, which is a corrupt world. And the majority of the issues of poverty and hunger are created by banking, which is a systematic, institutionalized, states backed crime of the biggest crime going on. So the amount of resources that ordinary people would need in order to survive, in order to avoid having to flee their homes in terms of escaping poverty, the amount of money, the resources that people would need in order to avoid having to leave their homes is very small indeed as compared with the mega billion pound, $1 billion, €1 billion that are robbed by the banks. And the so called billionaires like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, who are promoting their stupidity by advertising the fact that they are going to have a wrestling match between them. These are facilitated by banking and bankers. So these are extensions of the actual culture of robbery and stealing and thieving that banks represent, and the banks embody. There is no forum. There is no forum anywhere in the world today that actually audits, takes into account the behavior of the banking system, the bank, the banking business. So the public don't know most of what banks do, how they steal the money. For example, take the example of the Ponzi scheme. So let's look at the Ponzi scheme. So just as a verb explanation, how the banks operate. So the Ponzi scheme is an Italian, is a form of fraud that lures investors and pays profits to earlier investors with funds from the more recent investors. It's a serial kind of fraud named after the Italian businessman Charles Ponzi. The scheme leads victims to believe that profits are coming from legitimate business activity. for example, product sales or successful investments, and they remain unaware that other investors are the sources of funds. A Ponzi scheme can maintain the illusion. Remember that. That is what the banks are. A Ponzi scheme can maintain the illusion of a sustainable business as long as new investors contribute new funds and as long as most of the investors do not demand full repayment and still believe in the non existent assets they are purported to own. So, Charles Ponzi, the namesake of the scheme, was pictured in 1920. That is the picture on the entry on Ponzi scheme on the Wikipedia website that I'm looking at. Some of the first recorded incidents to meet the modern definition of the Ponzi scheme were carried out from 1869 to 1872 by Adele Spitzeder in Germany and by Sarah Howe in the United States in the 1880s through the Ladies' Deposit. Sarah Howe offered a solely female clientele an 8% monthly interest and then stole the money that the women had invested. She was eventually discovered and served 3 years in prison. The Ponzi scheme was also previously described in novels. Charles Dickens' 1844 novel Martin Chuzzlewit and his 1857 novel Little Dorrit both feature such a scheme. In the 1920s, Charles Ponzi carried out his scheme and became well known throughout the United States because of the huge amount of money that he took in. His original scheme was based on the legitimate arbitrage of international reply coupons for postage stamps, but he soon began diverting new investors' money to make payments to earlier investors and to himself. Unlike earlier similar schemes, Ponzi gained considerable press coverage both within the United States and internationally, both while it was being perpetrated and after it collapsed. This not only eventually led to the type of scheme being named after him. And there is a description of the various characteristics that the Ponzi scheme entails, includes, contains. And this is what the banks are. They are a highly sophisticated series of versions of the Ponzi scheme. So, this guy who is being featured in the FT liquidity, let's see what the last So this person is called liquidity. And the interviewer, the Financial Times person, is saying liquidity grew up in Florida, solidly middle class. His parents were immigrants. I wasn't a country club guy, he says. He attended an Ivy League university where he studied business and economics and graduated with large student loans. I went to school to land a job on Wall Street, he says. I just wanted to make money. He began an investment banking. I'll read that again, not an, it should be in. He began in investment banking, the quickest road he found to freedom from student debt. That's what got me through the first few years of work, paying that off. And then she talks about the lunch. Liquidity was first inspired by 2010 blog that millennial Americans of a certain background will cringe to remember. Total frat mob. Liquidity religiously followed the humor page, which satirized fraternity culture with shareable one liners submitted by anonymous fraternity members. It was caricature, but frequently misconstrued as inspirational by those who didn't clock the misogynistic, white, affluent characters being pilloried were them. When Instagram arrived and replaced blogs, it was the finance focused joke accounts such as Ebitada, Ebitdad, the OG, that resonated most with the young investment bank analyst. He launched the Liquidity Instagram account in 2017 while working in private equity, a common trajectory after investment banking. You either get promoted or you go to PE because most people tend to burn out after 2 years, he says. Now, there is no real detail about the intricate behavior and the dealings of the banking operations. This is just a summary. Essentially, this is part of the explanation as to why, despite the fact that banks are referred to often, typically like in this kind of superficial examination, banks are left alone, and it goes on. So, while the Ponzi schemers individually have been caught and reported and kind of commented on, the real Ponzi system, which is the banking, is not. And that is the explanation to the phrase that was used in the 2008 2009 financial crisis in the UK when various banks collapsed, and the phrase used was the bank, X or Y bank, too big to fail. That's the whole point. They don't want to declare a bank as failing because that would then collapse the whole criminal system and it would bring out all the facts that the banks are frauds, big frauds. So Gordon Brown, who was the prime minister at the time, lied, despite the fact that, as compared to Tony Blair, he was less of a liar than Tony Blair was, but that didn't make any difference. And Gordon Brown has still not told the truth about what he knew was going on during the crisis. So let's look at what they're saying now about the. Okay, so here is a very brief summary on the internet. It says the 2008 financial crisis began with cheap credit and lax lending standards that fueled the housing bubble. When the bubble burst, the banks were left holding trillions of dollars of worthless investments in super prime mortgages. Notice the amount being referred to, trillions of dollars of worthless investments. How can any dollar be described as worthless? Because as soon as it is declared worthless, then it should not be then promoted as being worthwhile, which is what they did with the trillions of dollars of worthless investments in subprime mortgages. The Great Recession that followed cost many their jobs, their savings, and their homes. The 2007 to 2000 finance crisis, as they're saying, the seeds of the financial crisis were planned during years of rock bottom interest rates and loose lending standards that fueled a housing price bubble in the US and elsewhere. It began as usual with good intentions. Faced with the bursting of the dot com bubble, a series of corporate accounting scandals, and the September 11 terrorist attacks, the Federal Reserve lowered the federal funds rate from 6.5% in May 2000 to 1% in June 2003. The aim was to boost, I'll read that again. The aim was to boost the economy by making money available to businesses and consumers at bargain rates. The result was an upward spiral in home prices as borrowers took advantage of the low mortgage rates. Even subprime borrowers, those with poor or no credit history, were able to realize the dream of buying a home. The banks then sold those loans onto Wall Street banks, which packaged them into what were billed as low risk financial instruments such as mortgage backed securities and collateralized debt obligations. Soon, a big secondary market for originating and distributing subprime loans developed, fueling register risk taking among banks, fueling greater risk taking among banks. The Securities and Exchange Commission in October 2004 relaxed the net capital requirements for five investment banks: Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, and Morgan Stanley. That freed them to leverage their initial investments by up to 30 times or even 40 times. So look at that. Just think about that. All of that was fraud. So you can continue to extrapolate the analysis on the evidence, and you can see that the banks are frauds, and all the crises and the resolution of the crisis are series of frauds. And they continue to perpetrate the lies and the frauds on the ordinary people, and they create the poverty, they maintain the hunger, maintain the destitution, and so on. So we shall be ending this 40-minute long broadcast at this stage. This has been just an introduction, and we shall continue in later editions.